Okay, we're going to play today Datsun L20s with twin Webers. I've got Castro Snr, who holds the naturally aspirated dyno record here with an L20. He has put 170 plus horsepower, and I think he's the only person who's ever exceeded 170 horsepower on this dyno with a single cam. I've got Mr. Castro Snr here with me. So Danny, what are we going to do today to the car?
Okay, this is one of my Datsun 1600 with a standard 2-liter engine. That's the car I ran it on the street as a fan. It's got the only modification is 45 Webers and a pair of extractors. And let's see what it does and make sure it's in good tune.
Okay, so it is an L20 2-liter.
2-liter, low compression,
standard engine, no cam, no headwork, nothing.
Standard engine, no cam, no headwork, only just good tuning. And this is why you guys, Unigroup, you're gonna check it out.
Thank you, Danny. Here's a closer look at our engine combination. L20B. Inlet and exhaust are on the same side on this engine, being a non-cross flow head. Here's our 45mm Webers. We've got the extractors, which you may just be able to see down the bottom there. So Danny, you've jetted this engine on the road. You seem to think that we're pretty close. We just need a check up to see how it runs up on the dyno.
Yeah, correct. The car runs very well on the road. It's beautiful on traffic. We need to make sure at full open throttle is no lean and the advance is correct.
Okay, now we'll give it a run up as is, baseline the car, and then see what adjustments are needed. How much power are you expecting at the wheels from this combo? Well,
an original 2-liter playing with carburetors will put about 105 horsepower, which is technically nothing, but I expected a little bit more. Depend of the time in advance. Let's see if we can put some better figure.
I'm in the car and I've got the dyno room fans going for extraction. You'll be surprised how much airflow you need to keep the dyno room fresh and clean. There's a lot of, I guess, 1 exhaust, 2 engine breathers, etc. that's dumping all into the dyno room that you need to extract to have clean air. Another consideration in the dyno room is that when we're tuning for power and running the engines hard, we don't want to be in an environment where there's lack of oxygen, where it doesn't allow the engine to be tuned in the conditions that it is going to see and experience when it's out on the road. That's where I find the dyno room has its advantages, where you've got fresh clean air supply all the time, one for the operators, one for the engine being tuned. I'm in first gear now, just doing my preliminary checks on the car before we start a power run. I've got my gas analyzer hooked up to the vehicle, so we're measuring air-fuel ratio. I've got the car strapped in, and what I like to do before I go full throttle is just to get the car at light load, see how it feels, because if there's a problem now, I may need to go and adjust my straps and strapping of the car. I'm at 2,500 RPM in 4th gear, which happens to be about 55 kilometers an hour. So the dyno is locked to keep me at 55 kilometers an hour, regardless of what I do with the engine load and throttle. So if I want to accelerate and put my foot down, open the throttles, the dyno will still keep me at my locked speed, which is 55 k's an hour, which equates to about 2,500 RPM. So with this load on the car now, which is about 6 kilowatts or roughly 8 horsepower, which is our load that we would have on the car at 2,500 RPM while we're cruising. Okay, mixtures here here and the way the engine feels, it feels nice. I'm going to roll into it with a bit more throttle, and then if everything looks good there, then I'm going to slowly work my way up to full throttle. Okay, back to idle, just some observations on that. As far as strapping the car down and how it felt on the dyno, everything felt okay. We're good for a power run there. Looking at the engine tune-up and how it felt, at light load holding about 5 to 8 horsepower, engine felt good, mixtures were good. As I went to probably about 30% throttle, where I'm in between my main jets and my progression circuit, the engine went a bit lean there and the car started surging. It felt a bit unhappy, so that's an area we can look at. Once I went about 75% throttle and beyond, so where I'm completely on the main jets, the car felt good, mixtures richened up to about mid to high 12 to 1, engine felt okay, so far so good. So let's try this at a higher RPM just before our power run, see how the engine feels. Okay, same process now at 3,500 RPM, which happens to be 83 k's an hour. I'm about half throttle now, and again, engine's got the same unhappiness at that mid throttle before the main jets fully kick in. So I'm going to now drive through that and go straight into the range where the main jets are operating, see what my mixtures look like. At 3,500 RPM, what I've observed and measured was almost identical to what happened at 2,500 RPM. So at really light throttle, we were good. At about medium throttle, it does need a bit more fuel, and once I got to 100% throttle or full throttle, the car richened up nicely and everything looked good. Let's look at our dyno run from our baseline runs. We've stopped at 123 horsepower. So looking at the power curve, which is this one up the top here, you can see that the engine's still going and the power's climbing. So this one's going to make quite a bit more power than expected. At that point where I've stopped at about 5,500. The reason I stopped was because my fuel mixture curve, which is the one here, it started to go lean. So I was waiting for it to recover and make a downturn, but it kept going up. So on this, just explaining, as we go higher in numbers in air fuel ratio here, so at that point we were at about 13.5 to 1. It is getting lean and it didn't recover and it looked like it was going to keep going up, so I stopped the run. Where we are here at about 12.5, 13 to 1, the engine seems to perform well. You can see here there's a dip here where we go a little bit richer. This point is about 11.3, 11.4. And if you take a quick close look at the power graph, there is a corresponding dip there in power. You see it where we've gotten a little bit rich here. I'll pan back out. You can see there's a little dip in power. So engine doesn't like to be quite this rich. So we are aiming somewhere between 12 and 13 just for a starting baseline. And at the beginning of the run, mixtures are looking good. I'm starting the run somewhere around 3,000 RPM. So we're going to do some jetting changes and see what we can do to improve the situation. Danny Castro Snr is not your typical operator. He's come very prepared to this dyno session. This is his collection of jets, all numbered, all in different compartments. I must say his assortment of jets and his collection is definitely better than ours. Danny's made a quick dash home and grabbed these emulsion tubes, and we're making a change now.
Now, we don't.
Let's look at our after dyno run with the jetting changes. Starting at the bottom end here, the engine got a little bit too rich between 3,000 and 4,000 RPM. You can hear this on the dyno run where it misfired. Now, it was rich. I stayed into it knowing that it's not going to hurt the engine, just to find out what was going to happen after, because that's the area that we were looking at making the improvement. So from that point on, we got the rich misfires around here where the mixture's around 10:1, where my analyzer doesn't read any richer, and we've got the flat lines. Okay, come to about 4,500, mixtures came back to a more acceptable range. We're about 11.5:1, and then our power, as the mixtures leaned off, our power shot up as well. Okay, and then from that point on, things looked pretty good up until this point here. It's around 5,800 RPM. We reached a peak power of 130 horsepower, and then the engine kept the power all the way up to 6,700 where I stopped the run. So you can see here with our fuel mixtures, we got into about the optimum range around here, and up top it started to get too rich again, and that's part of the reason why I think at this point the power flattened off and we've got this flat section up on top of the power curve there. Just zooming in to give you guys a better look at that. And there's our mixture plot, and there's our run up after the changes. Okay, well, we're not finished here, but unfortunately we are out of time, so we're going to have to come back, and there's definitely going to be an episode 2 to this one. Okay, no problem. So Mr. Castro will just pack it up.
Filming?
Yeah, I'm filming. That's okay. So we'll pack it up for today, and we will be back again another time.
We'll be back with rejetting to make sure the fuel air mixture is right. And thank you, Unigroup.
Once again, Dyno's been a very valuable tool to us today. It allowed us to see what we needed to change on the car to improve. Although we ran out of time and we didn't have the right parts to accomplish what we needed to, we're going to be back. But it just shows what you can do on a relatively standard engine with bolt-ons and careful tuning. That 130 horsepower, I'm quite impressed with that power, because I really wasn't expecting that, and I don't think Danny was either. So alright, let's get this car back. Let's get the tune-up correct, and let's see what she makes at the wheels. I think it's going to be probably maybe not quite 140, but maybe 135 with a much better spread of power, especially fixing that bottom end up where it got too rich.